afternoon to everyone who is logged in. My name is Shania Francis. I am the owner of SF Education Consulting Company, and we are here today to discuss the opening of New York City Public Schools, which is supposed to take place September 10th. And there are a lot of questions and a lot of concerns among students, teachers, school members, etc., in regards to the decision to open schools. And so I want to take this time to actually start off with our guest, Dr. Okiki, who is kind enough to give us a few minutes of his time just to discuss his view on us entering the schools with the coronavirus epidemic taking place, and to give us some tips and strategies on how to keep ourselves safe during this time. And then we get started with our panel. So with that being said, Dr. Okiki, thank you again for meeting with us and your time. Did you want to just briefly tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background?
Thank you very much. I am Dr. K.K. Gerald. I work with Federal Medical Center, Kefi, National State, Nigeria. I work with the Department of Public Health / Community Medicine Department. Now, the pandemic that is in vogue, if I may put it that way, is basically in our courts. So that's where I am.
Thank you. So I know you and I spoke briefly yesterday about some things that I wanted to ask you. Can you just tell our audience quickly, how is COVID spread?
COVID spread, COVID, or whatever you call it, coronavirus 2019, that's first, is an infectious, let me just give a small background. COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time in December 2009, following an outbreak in Wuhan, China. The coronavirus has spread rapidly. As of mid-August, we have worldwide about 21.5 million people are confirmed positive, confirmed cases in the world now. As of mid-August, it spread, coming to your question, it spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets that is produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, sneezes. Also, it spreads by direct physical contact with an infected person, such as shaking hands, hugging, sometimes others that are coming physically and having contact with an infected person. These are the major areas, major ways that COVID-19 spread.
Thank you. So I know, so for as teachers, we have Mr. Harrison, Ms. Barche, Ms. Masamba, we all work in schools. We're not in the healthcare field, but one of the suggestions obviously is for us to wear, and for students to wear masks all day. Teachers have a schedule about 6 hours and 50 minutes. Is that correct, Mr. Harrison?
Yeah, that's our normal work day, pretty much, yeah.
So 6 hours, 50 minutes that we are expected to wear this mask. So what are some benefits to wearing masks in regards to stopping the spread of COVID?
Okay. Sorry, sometimes I won't go straight to your question.
Okay.
the people that, why we wear face masks as a preventive measure, then the people, who are these people that we wear, why do we wear face masks in the first place? We wear face masks because some people are infected, We don't want to get it. Prevention is better than cure, they say. And we wear face masks because some people are asymptomatic. That means they are infected, but are asymptomatic. Some are pre-symptomatic. They're infected, they are going to have the symptoms very soon, but the symptoms are yet to manifest. Remember, the incubation period of COVID-19 is 2 to 14 days. So within the range, somebody can manifest any time within the range. Yet, at initial time, you may see the person as asymptomatic, but with time, he may manifest. Then some asymptomatic. So we wear face masks basically to prevent ourselves getting infected. That is number one. Two, if you are infected, to prevent you spreading it to others. That's the basic use of face masks. Thank you.
So are there any negatives to wearing face masks for such a long period of time?
Of course there are. Face masks, when you wear face masks, what happens, physically speaking, when you take in air, you expire oxygen, carbon dioxide. Wait some time. If you wear face masks for quite long time, the carbon dioxide that is you expire will accumulate. And carbon dioxide, remember, is heavier than oxygen. It will push oxygen away from your nostrils, and then you keep expiring carbon dioxide and taking them in. What will happen? There will be poor perfusion of the lungs. And if there's poor perfusion of the lungs, the oxygen that we get to the heart will be reduced. When the oxygen that gets to the heart is reduced through blood, there will be more of deoxygenated blood in the circulation. And it has devastating effects on the health of the individual. So wearing a mask for a long time has its effects.
That's something that I think most people on the panel would agree. We have not heard anybody say that. In regards to wearing masks for a long period of time. So we have a lot of students who have asthma, teachers have asthma. So if we're wearing this mask for such a long period of time, is there any consequence to that?
Yeah, in fact, those who are asthmatic, asthma is a respiratory tract infection, and there is, when it comes, there is a big problem. So tell people, we advise those who are asthmatic not to wear masks. Avoid. Now, there are two problems in an asthmatic patient. One, he should not wear mask. Two, if he doesn't wear mask, he's exposed to somebody who is infected with COVID-19. If he's exposed and he doesn't, what do we advise him to do? Not just avoid any gathering. Where people are, where any place you think you meet people, avoid going there. Then make sure you have your inhaler always with you, in case you may go out by chance or by whatever means to where people are. Have it, because if the person, the teacher, whatever you call it, or the student wears face mask for a long time, the person may be gasping for oxygen. And if care is not taken, it can lead to the death of the patient. So the problem with face masks and asthmatic patients.
So we might have a student in our class who's wearing a mask who could be having an asthma attack, and we wouldn't even know because they have a mask on.
Well, the person doesn't know that he is asthmatic. I think that's the most dangerous one. Because if the person receives attack while wearing the face mask, it's problematic. Some of them, if you see somebody who just have acute asthmatic attack, it's not something to write home about. It's too bad to behold. So anybody, any patient who, well, for those who don't know that they are asthmatic, because we don't know that they're asthmatic, unless there's a family history. If there's a family history and the person is not manifesting, if there's a family history of asthma and the person is not manifesting, we advise to stay away. But if there's no family history and the person doesn't know, wear mask. But at any point, the person has or get to have an attack, from that day on, stop wearing masks. That's what we advise.
Okay, and I just want to ask you two more questions because I know you have to go. So we're told, you know, they're going to keep us safe. Students are going to have masks on. They're going to clean the rooms. But we talked about this yesterday. Are there other ways that we could be spreading, even if we have a mask on and we're in a classroom, that a student or a teacher could be spreading it without even realizing it?
Yeah. You know, I categorize this thing, what do you call it? Preventive measures of COVID-19, of COVID-19 to 4 categories. 1, you keep everything clean, keep the things clean. 2, wear face mask. 3, avoid close contact. 4, restrict your travel. So apart from wearing face masks, people can get, apart from the other ways people can get infected unknowingly to them is when somebody who is infected, an infected patient who is a carrier, maybe a symptomatic carrier or pre-symptomatic carrier, because symptomatic carriers know they have it and they isolate themselves and go to hospital or whatever. But the people that spread this most are asymptomatic carriers and pre-symptomatic carriers. They spread it most. So the surfaces or the things they use, if there are common things they use, like using the same laptop, computer in office, and this person the person touches it, uses another person touches our items in classroom or whatever, and picks the nose, touches the mouth, unconscious, one can get it through that way. So these are the other ways. That's why we advocate constant washing of hands with soap and water, under running water, not water, under running water. Then if there's no water, and so if you can use hand sanitizer, where there's no hands, with clean surfaces and tops, cover your nose and mouth while sneezing so that you don't liberate or render homeless those droplets, and they will stick somewhere. Somebody will just unconsciously touch them, pick them, and touch his or her nose and get infected. Then clean and disinfect frequently every touched object. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. And my last question for you, Dr. Kiki, which is something that the teachers definitely want to know. We talked about it again yesterday. What are some tips that you have for us as teachers if we are wearing a mask for 6 hours and 50 minutes? What are some tips that you have for us for doing that?
Well, that's to ask. Teachers who must wear this mask for a long time, we advocate at intervals to have some sort of break. Isolate themselves, go to a secluded place that they are alone or far away from people. That is social distancing. And remove the mask so that they can breathe fresh air for quite some time. Then they go back to class, put on the mask, the teaching continues. So at intervals, they should go out, go on break, whatever they call it, go out from the class, go out from the crowd. Their mask, like now I'm alone. I can afford not to wear my mask. But if I'm going out, my mask is with me here. I carry a lot of them in my bag. I don't make that mistake. But when I'm alone, I wear a mask so that I can have my fresh air. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we know you have to go. Again, we thank you so much for being here with us. I'm sure our panel appreciated what you said. And there's some few things that you said that we're going to talk about when you leave, especially those breaks, Mr. Union Rep Marquise. We might need to talk about that. And so a lot of things that you said, especially parents who might have children who have asthma, they might hear what you say and decide, I'm going to keep my kid home now. So thank you so much for your time, Dr. Okiki. We really appreciate it. And
you're welcome.
Thank you so much. We know you have to go now, so have a great day.
I have to go. I have to go. I
Yes,
have to go. Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Okiki. So Dr. Okiki is actually in Nigeria. So I think, what's the time there? Like 7 p.m. or something. So he's been up. So let's get started with the rest of the panel. We have Mr. Marquise Harrison, Ms. Gilda Boache, and Ms. Karima Masamba. So if you could just briefly introduce yourself to our audience, and then we'll get started. So we'll start with Mr. Harrison.
Marquise Harrison. I am a U of T chapter leader at the Frederick Douglass Academy in Harlem, and I've been the chapter leader there for 12 years. And I work with the U of T in other capacities as well. So I consider myself a union activist as well as a government teacher. And I'm also a member of Harlem Community Board 10, where I serve as the vice chairperson here in Harlem. So dealing with an array of community issues as well as both educational issues in general.
Thank you. Ms. Boache?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gilda Boache, and I teach middle school science at the Bronx Early College Academy. Been there for quite some time now. I am one of the teacher leaders at BECA, also known as Bronx Early College Academy. In addition to that, I also mentor prospective residents from the Museum of Natural History, as well as the New York City Teaching Collaborative Program.
Nice, thank you. Ms. Masamba?
Hello, everyone. My name is Karima Masamba. I am a high school guidance counselor at Frederick Douglass Academy 7 in Brownsville, Brooklyn. I've been an educator. This would be my 12th year. My first about 10 years was as a teacher, and the last year and a half in the guidance counselor role.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to respond to some text. And hello, everyone. My name is Shania Francis. I am a teacher leader as well as an advanced placement and ELA teacher at FDA 7. Marquise is at the first one, where I'm at the 7th one in Brownsville, Brooklyn. I work with Ms. Masamba, who's a great guidance counselor at our school. And I serve in an array of roles at my school. And I started SF Education Consulting Company last year, which was actually just in time for this summer, which was to do our virtual summer camp programs, as well as our academic and college preparatory programs that we will continue throughout the year. So the purpose of this panel, as was stated earlier, was to really talk about, you know, it seems to be official, even though I guess Mr. Harrison can talk about it some more. The union has a very different perspective, but it seems to be official that we will be going back September 10th. The mayor is pretty adamant about that. We moved the time up of this panel because we know that there's going to be a town hall from the DOE at 3:30 today, and we wanted everybody to be able to see that. So we kind of wanted to have a pre-conversation about our thoughts and concerns about in regards to going back to school. And so let's just start off with our opinions. I mean, you know, how do we feel? We heard from Dr. Okiki. He gave his medical professional opinion on, you know, not opinion, he gave some facts on coronavirus and then gave us some tips on how to keep ourselves safe. So just how do we feel as people in schools who are going to be there for at least 6 hours and I think 20 minutes, they said, every day, Monday through Friday. We know our students are going to be alternating, but we will not be alternating. So how do we feel about the decision to open schools in September?
Well, I'll start. I mean, it just doesn't seem like right now it's planned out enough, or you know, I'm literally also on here in Harlem on District 5's community planning opening school team, and everyone down from the top of the line seems to not have answers. So principals definitely don't know. From as building leaders, they don't know how it's going to happen. Teachers are not even in the conversation. Guidance counselors, anybody who's a building staff member definitely doesn't know. But when principals and superintendents are still questioning, like, where are we getting PPE and all the protective equipment that we need, ventilation systems have not been cleared in a lot of buildings. They still don't even have air conditions in all the buildings and all these other things. It doesn't seem realistic. The U of T's outlined like some real clear, bright lines today, along with many other community partners. They had a major press conference, NAACP, all types of civic justice, immigrant organizations. And I mean, yeah, I think the U of T's perspective is like right now, there doesn't seem any way, because we've outlined a clear, bright line. The AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, the U of T have outlined like a whole code of standards that have to be implemented before we're able to go back into buildings. Right now, there's also budget problems, right? And then on top of that, you have 19 to about 22% of the city teachers who've actually applied for the accommodations and who will not actually go into buildings at all, right? During at least up to December 31st. So then you also have the question of how can buildings even maintain the amount of students that are supposed to be maintained, given the contractual confinements of teachers. With some of these buildings have a disproportionate amount of teachers who will be approved, right? Because some teachers are more, some buildings have more senior staff or health related injuries and things like that. You know, so like in my own school building, I believe 22 teachers have applied out of 90, right? So that's a lot of people though that would be out of the building. How will they then program even with, we did an estimation that if my school is about a little more than 1,000 or about 1,100. So we estimated that if we were meeting like the 1/4 in a building a day, that's 400 students. With the breakdown of 9 to 12 students per teacher, we'd actually need about 134 people in the building. We're already going to be at like about 70 right now, we're saying. Like, so there's no way that some of these things can happen. So now we had to shift it down to maybe allowing only 200 students in the building. But that's not meeting the mayor and the chancellor's scheduling that we were supposed to come up with. It was supposed to be like about 1/3 or 1/4, you know, each day with the rotation or whatever they're saying. So it just doesn't seem like it's really possible, but we will see. You know, I think like give or take, my opinion is like anything can change and anything will change come the last minute, which is unfortunate. So, you know, it would be much better, I think, if the mayor and the chancellor make a decision now to say, okay, we're going to be remote for a little bit longer. Because we definitely don't believe that by September 10th, any of this stuff will be in. I mean, Michael Moe, everyone has said that. By September 10th, when students are supposed to return, no, we'll not be ready. So at least we think that maybe we should just plan out now and say, we're going to, you know, push it back at least to fully think and try to get these things in place. But we definitely don't see a September 10th start. I mean, I don't know how that would happen.
Miss Amba, did you have any?
No, I mean, I think if you asked me this question like back in May, June, I would have said, yes, absolutely. I need to get out my house. I need to be back at work. But, you know, now that we're at this point and it's a reality that they're saying, okay, September 10th, you're expected to be back. For me, that's very concerning. I think there are, you know, the talk is all good. You know, they're bringing out all these documents, these long documents explaining this and that. But at the end, there still are a lot of unanswered questions. A lot of what Marquise just spoke about, you know, just yesterday, you know, the U of T counselors unit chapter, they had a meeting, a 2-hour meeting, and they spoke about some things. And, you know, the message we're getting from the mayor and chancellor as far as, you know, being back, you know, we're ready. September 10th is very different, as Marquise just brought up. You know, we're not. The reality is we're not ready to enter. And, you know, I think about the ventilation, you know, that they brought up, and they're telling us, you know, we'll open windows, you know, but is that really enough, you know? And as far as even as now thinking as a parent, you know, one of the concerns that a lot of parents have as well is what about childcare for our own kids? You know, we're talking about as a staff, we're expected to be in the building 5 days a week. But if we have our kids that are now also going to be using this hybrid model, I don't really hear much of a resolution as far as, well, what kind of childcare is going to be provided for us, you know, for what kind of accommodations are going to be for our own children, you know. So I think just health-wise, there are, as much as I would love to have that sense of normalcy and being back, I think everyone's safety is more important than that. And I don't think we're at a place where it is fully safe to be back in the buildings.
I know that Ms. Masama just brought up, you know, childcare. I feel that whenever I'm on these, not message boards, but let's say somebody posts something, news, you know, organization posts something, a lot of the comments are parents saying, you know, well, who's going to watch our kids if schools are closed? Or, you know, what are we going to do? And so who's messaging number one, as a teacher, I did not realize that my role was that vital in maintaining the economy of America. I did not realize I played that big of a role. And if I do, I think they might need to start paying me a little bit more for having such a big role, because it's almost as though they're saying schools are the backbone of society. And if we're not open, everything is going to start to crumble. And if that's the case, then we are certainly not treated as such. So we might need to start renegotiating as educators our role in society, because it feels like they're putting a lot on us in regards to what's happening. With that being said, we also hear a lot about, well, students recover quicker. That may be true, but what about the person who's standing in front of them teaching them? Or what about Ms. Masamba, who may have to have, I don't even know if you guys would even be having one-on-one sessions with students during this time, but what if you had mandated counseling? What about that, right? And so I would like to, my opinion on opening the schools is, I would like to hear that be a little bit more of a conversation about the adults in the building as well. We know that students recover, but we also know that there are long-lasting effects to COVID. And so yes, the student might recover, they might also not know they have it, but what about all of the people around them who may find themselves getting really sick, and maybe even passing away because a student who looked perfectly fine was, as Dr. Okiki said, touching things in the classroom, touching laptops, etc. So I wanted to follow up with a question to Marquise, because you might have more information on this. Are there any conversations? We know we saw the whole display of like them going into the school all the way in Far Rockaway, and doing the whole cleaning thing, right? And I know Miss Masamba and I were looking like, why didn't they come to our school? Or, you know, something. So someone just asked the question, but I'll ask that to Marquise later. But are there any, actually that's a part of it. So someone just asked, will New York City schools provide masks? So is that something that we can expect? Like, are they going to be giving us masks every day? Because I know, for example, I use a cloth mask. I just find it just too expensive to keep buying masks. So I use a cloth mask, and every time I come home, I wash it and I let it dry, and then I move on. I cannot guarantee that everyone is washing their cloth mask every single day. And I don't think that everyone is washing their cloth masks every single day. So is that something that the DOE will be doing? Because I know, for example, or if anyone else who's watching this, whenever I go to a doctor's office, they give me a new mask and make me take off whatever mask I'm wearing. Because they don't want me to come in. They don't know if I washed it, you know, if I'm wearing it on the wrong side or whatever. So is that something that we're going to be looking forward to in the DOE? Every time we walk in, we're getting a new mask?
You were asking me that directly, or like, okay. I mean, to my understanding, that's supposed to be a part of some of the protocols, that masks are supposed to be available to all teachers, all staff members every day. So that's supposed to be a part of the protocols. All those equipment, there's supposed to be temperature checks. This, again, who's doing this? How is it being done? Where is it being done? None of those answers, but those are all a part of the plans that are written on paper from the Department of Education currently. That's all supposed to be provided, right? So that if again, if someone doesn't have a mask, I don't know if there's even questions now too, is what qualifies as an appropriate mask? Because there are even questions as to which masks are best, or there's some masks that are not, you know, necessarily the correct one. So is it that something that I went to visit Mount Sinai Hospital the other day? They didn't care what you had on. One of their protocols is when you walked into the hospital, you had to remove your mask, take their mask, put, you know, do hand sanitizer their way, and everyone wore their mask in the hospital. I don't know if that's something that the New York City Department of Education is coming up with, a standard like that, where it doesn't matter what you have on, we don't care. Here's what you're gonna wear. I don't know how. I don't see this being possible, because there's just also, in the same light that we're talking about all this stuff, is that there are so many budget cuts currently to the New York City Department of Education's budget, as well as, like, you know, on top of what I'm talking about, on top of the 22 teachers that are going to be out of my school, my principal had to access 8 teachers. This is a problem that principals have across the city of New York right now. So there's a major problem, like, with budgets and money. And I mean, that's the real complicated part, is that we're talking about COVID-19. outside of this budget part. But this money problem is really the biggest problem that prevents a lot of the implementation of a lot of the things that, and that's what the UFT's obviously been focusing on, is that's why one of the main goals of the UFT and a lot of school systems across the city is to get the federal government to bail out some of these states, to give some money. That money hasn't come. The Congress is not talking about that, and we're supposed to start school in 2 weeks. They're not even discussing right now. They're on vacation. So it just seems pretty impossible unless New York City or New York State is ready to enter a major deficit, which they're saying they can't, to actually implement all those systems that they're saying, ventilation, making sure PPE is there, all the equipment, all those things. It doesn't seem possible. It almost seems like going remote would be the best thing and most cost effective, honestly. Just we're looking at costs for safety purposes as well, obviously. But as far as your point, I do want to comment on the part you were saying, and I don't want to take everyone's time, because you were saying something that is really important. Yeah, we are the backbone, and we keep New York City running. That is the only, yeah, we need to renegotiate. We need new money. We need more money. Because New York City recognize that, the president has been saying it, and everyone doesn't want to address that. They don't want to pay teachers right and guidance counselors and all those things. But they are literally trying to get the economy rolling on the backs of teachers and really putting our lives at stake, right, and our families' lives at stake, just to get schools open. Because the president's idea is that if schools open, kids can go to school. We're seeing in small school systems the outbreak. Imagine our school system, which is really a whole city. 1.1, it's a whole city. It's bigger than most of these schools, bigger than most cities in the country. So how could we say that we're going to be able to, and we don't, and then we have money issues, we have space issues. We're the only school system too, when we're talking about where we have major co-locations, all these things, 4 and 5 schools in one building. But yet we're talking about all these things, and it's like we're not even being realistic. And that's why sometimes I have a hard time watching the TV, hearing Chancellor, I respect the Chancellor, but hearing him say, we're ready to go. I'm like, is he blatantly lying and misleading New Yorkers, or is he really something wrong with him? And I don't want to say that about him, because I actually like this Chancellor, but very disappointed with the response around this, because it seems like almost he's blatantly lying to New Yorkers. We're so ready, we're so prepared. And I'm on building teams where, I don't want to say how high up, but people that are superintendents and people who are right under these people are like, what? I don't know. We don't know how to do this. We don't know what's going on. We're waiting for Central. Everyone keeps saying we're waiting for Central to give us guidance. Mm-hmm. Central is the Chancellor's office. Okay, we're going to keep waiting.
So thank you for that. I want to take a quick shift because we are educators and talk about this hybrid model. The idea that students will be going to school 2 to 3 times a week and then doing remote learning and swapping. When we think about the populations that most of us serve, we have students who have an array of needs, whether it's social emotional, whether it's academic, etc. What impact do we think, and just think about our personal experience from last year's school year's remote learning experience, the impact that this may have on students, and what can we do to improve it? So, I'll start with my own experience. I know that I spent a lot of my time tracking students down. Those first few months, just trying to get students online, having conversations with parents and explaining what we mean by remote learning. I think a lot of parents thought it just meant you post some stuff and then the kids do it and then that's it. Or I think some parents thought that it was maybe the teacher's teaching something and the kids are just watching, but they're not actually producing work, because some parents will say, well, he logged on. And I'm like, but what did they do when they logged on? Did they do the work that was posted? Did they watch the live session? Did they sign in for the tutoring session? And so just thinking about all of those, and we may have to do this again when maybe they realize we're not really ready to go back. What impact first did we realize that this had on students, and what are some solutions that we might be able to implement?
For me, as far as this hybrid model is concerned, I think there's definitely some pros and cons to it. I think, as you said, Ms. Francis, a lot of my time too was spent really just tracking students down, checking in, what's going on, why aren't you connecting? So because they were home or remote, they were, and a lot of them were disconnected, right? So for me, the hybrid model, yeah, fine, okay, if they are in the building, I think that sense of accountability is helpful, right? Because they now know, all right, I'm going to see Miss Francis on Tuesday and Wednesday. I know that I need to get my work done. You know, she's not going to accept anything less than that, right? So I think in that sense, the hybrid model is good and it's helpful because they know they are going to see the person, whereas before they could hide behind the computer, they could not answer the phone, they could not respond to emails, they could really disappear and for a little while before we get in contact with them. But now they are going to be in the building. So I think having them in front of us a couple days a week will be helpful and just be able to better support them, even if it's from 6 feet away. I think that part is helpful. But then as far, I don't know if this is going with where in terms of where you asked the question, but for me, as far as our communities are concerned, again, it goes back to that health, that safety piece of part of it, right? Because when you talk about communities that were hardest hit by it, it was students that are in our communities, you know, in areas like the Brownsville, the East New York, East Flatbush, and others, you know. And if you're talking about these are the areas that are highest hit, what does that mean for our students? You know, are they now going to also be the students that are hardest hit by if there is this, you know, resurgence in New York City? You know, and as far as our students, like from a social and emotional standpoint, what does that mean for them? You know, I had a student that emailed me back in June that's like, you know, I tested positive, my family, my whole household was positive, and I'm scared, you know, but yet this is a student where he didn't select the remote model. He's going to be back in the building, you know, so for him, like, what does that mean? Is he going to be in the building, but, you know, just isolated and shut down because he's scared of touching or he's scared of interacting because he had that experience, you know? So I think it means it's, and then how does that affect his academics too, right? Because this is a student that was a pretty strong student. And so now the fact that he had this experience, is that now going to affect him, and is he not going to be as solid as he was before, you know? So I think there are pros to them being in the building, this hybrid model, and they can benefit from having that face-to-face interaction with the teacher. But then for me, it just keeps coming back to that safety aspect of it as well.
I wanted to actually follow up on what you said in regards to the student who did contract it, and now you're wondering, you know, how that could impact the student. As teachers, you know, how can we create an environment, because we're all scared, everybody's scared, right? But teachers still are expected to like put on this brave face and still always put the student first. So how can we create this safe space, so to speak, with students where we are maintaining our distance, where we are, you know, trying to implement these protocols, but also creating a space where students don't feel like they're in this foreign space, that it is still a welcoming environment for them? Because I know for myself, I'm like, I don't even want them to talk, right? Like, I don't even want you answering the question. Type the answer in Google Drive and I will see what your answer was, right? Like, because that's how I'm thinking, like, because I'm like, you know, sometimes when I go, I'll touch the side of my mask and I'm like, but it's a little bit of air right here. Can something get through that little part? And so now you have 12 kids or however many, 9 kids in the room talking, and, you know, some of them put the mask under their nose and all kinds of stuff. And so I'm like, I don't even want you to talk to me in the classroom. And so it's like, you know, how can we try to, you know, be safe, but also make the students feel welcome? So I was asking you as guidance, Miss.
Oh, for me to respond. Okay. Sorry. So goodness. I mean, I think in coming back, I think being like having that conversation with them, I think letting them know, like, you know, I like, we all had this experience. We all, you know, we were all away for this amount of time. We're all human, right? And safety is an issue for all of us, you know? And so letting them know how you feel, kind of what you shared, what your experiences was, where, you know, you're I won't say paranoid because it's real, right? But letting them know that, you know, I want you guys to feel safe, but at the same time, everyone's safety is important to me, right? And so maybe even just posing that question to them, like, what are some things that we can do as a classroom? What can I do as a teacher so that we all can feel safe? Because they know, I mean, they know at this point, at least the 11th to the 10th to 12th grade students, they know you already. They know how you interact with them. They know, Miss Francis and your style and your approach, right? And so I think that's a conversation that you and probably most teachers can have with their students to just have that real conversation early on. For the newer students that don't yet have that rapport with the students, it may be a little more challenging with the freshmen, let's say, that may be going in. But outside of that, I think just being open with the students, right? Because if, let's say, the students, as we all know, they pick up on things quickly. Like, they'll know, like, oh, why she acting like that, or why is he acting like that, But if you tell them, look, you want to be safe, I want to be safe, and if you ask me a question, I might answer. I may stand 6 feet back. That's for your safety and also for my safety, and I think they would get it. Because in the end, they don't want to get it either. No one wants to. Everybody wants to be safe. So I think they would understand, but I think it's a matter of just really being open and, upfront about it.
So somebody like Miss Barcher, you actually teach, like we have big kids. Barcher actually has smaller, 6th grade, 7th grade.
Okay.
So, I mean, like, how would your interactions change? Because, we talk all the time. The kids, they see you, they want to give you a hug. Miss, I ain't seen you in so long. Where you been? I missed you. And all of that. And yeah, maybe you missed them too. But it's like, how do you feel, Miss Barcher? Like, how are your interactions going to be different as far as, with your students when you return?
Well, I'll say this. I agree with Karima, Ms. Masamba. I think that we have to be as transparent as possible with our students. I'm very open to the kids, and I tell them exactly what it is, and I think they respect me more for it. And so therefore, I would just keep that conversation open. So yes, they would want to come over and give me hugs, and likewise, I would like it too, but I would also have to tell them, like, look, we do understand that Corona still exists, and so therefore, we have to do the safe approach, and we could just, probably just, wiggle our elbows or something like that. And I would just be very open to them for them to understand, like, look, these are some challenging times that we're in, but we're going to get through this. So I think just being transparent, being me, and, understanding, what I'm going through, what the kids are going through, because we're all in it together. We got to try and make the safer choices. We got to put safety first. So I would just be very open and transparent to the kids.
And even like when I think about the kids, high school, middle school kids, like I know, for example, I have two younger brothers, and one just graduated high school. He's headed to college, and the other one is headed to 11th grade. And the 11th grade brother joked around. He was like, well, I mean, I'm young, I'll be fine, right? And so it's kind of like, I'm sure our kids have that impression too, right? Like, I could take my mask off, or, I'll be fine if something happens to me. And so they may not be as cautious, right, when they're interacting with us. And so it's really important that when we're engaging them, as Ms. Masamba said, like, we really need to let them know, this is to keep all of us safe. But I also think that the messaging, we don't want to scare the kids, but we also don't want to give them this false sense of security that I do think that is the messaging, which is like, oh, they recover, they'll be fine, because kids do get really sick. They have these follow-up issues that I can't remember the name of it, but it was like where they have inflammation throughout their body or something, like some type of disease that I've never even heard of. And so we know, and particularly in our areas, we're in Brownsville. I used to teach in the South Bronx, which is where Ms. Brache is at, and Marquise is in Harlem. I know almost all of the areas where we teach, asthma is very high for our kids, very high. And so, yes, you guys may bounce back, but there are a lot of underlying issues, and a lot of underlying health concerns that a lot of our kids have. We see them, they come in the morning, eating very unhealthy. I'm sorry, people are still coming in. They have unhealthy eating habits. Unfortunately, a lot of our kids are overweight. And so there are all these things. Who is this trying to connect? I'm sorry, guys. Let me. remove this person. There are all these issues that our students have that we have to take into consideration, and they also have to take into consideration. So I'm wondering, Mr. Harrison or anyone, while we're doing this, you know, we have these 20-minute meetings every morning that we're supposed to have, or these regroup meetings, etc. Is there going to be guidance on how to have these conversations, how to have these conversations with students? Because our default, right, if I'm trying to protect myself, that default is going to be, yes, I'm an educator, but I'm also a girl from the Bronx. And that default might be a little snappy, like, look, I told you to back up. Stop touching me, right? Like, I might try to be professional and I might try to be a teacher, but, you know, when you are afraid, your default is whoever, you know, your true character. And so are we going to be trained on how to have these conversations with students so that we don't have to call Mr. Harrison because we done got a complaint filed against us because we done said something to a kid because they wouldn't back up?
I think here's the thing. You got to get as much training as you got to teach remote.
Oh, that is not a good answer.
So, you don't like, we're not getting nothing. Like, I mean, I'm honestly like, I have been so relaxed during this, and I get a lot of emails, like people just, you know, the panicking. I just got an email. I'm not going to say, but I got an email like just this morning. Hi, I haven't heard back from you. I'm like, I'm on vacation, really, officially. But
Let's stop there.
it's like, oh, are we gonna have to be in the building? I was like, I don't know the answer to a lot of things. No one knows a lot of things. You ask principals, they don't know the answers. This is the whole point of like with the UFT and CSA are both on the same page. We're all on the same page in regards to why schools can't open. Principals don't know much of anything. I keep telling people, stop asking the principal. I feel bad for principals because they don't know either. And it makes them look bad, but they don't know. They really don't know. So if we're going to get, there's no way we're going to get that much training. Maybe, you know, maybe a memo, but that's going to be the training. Like, you're not going to expect like, here's like some workshops and now we're going to,
that's what I was hoping for, because I need a workshop.
Before those conversations, we need workshops on how do we teach remotely still. Like, there's so many people who don't even know, how do you teach without materials? Like, how do you do anything? There's so much things like you don't have in place. I would say that's important, that conversation and those things are important, but there's like about 50 things probably that should go before that, even before those conversations that we need to get information on and training on, that, you know, there's no sign that, first of all, in order to give us the training, you have to bring us back and pay us.
Right.
In all honesty, right? Like, we're not being paid until September 8th. So are we going to do all those trainings in 2 days before September 10th, before school starts? You know, they haven't even been offering us free. I mean, lots of thousands and thousands of teachers would actually volunteer for a lot of things for free now, but they haven't even been providing you know what I'm saying? It's like, teachers would, guidance counselors, and all of it, a lot of us would go back for free stuff because we really want help. We're not even getting that, the free stuff being offered. So how can you really do this?
So we actually just got our other panelists on, Lamar Timmons Long. Lamar, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you just briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lamar Timmons Long. I am an English teacher, special educator, ENL person, ENL teacher. I wear so many different hats. I've been teaching for 8 years in the Department of Education in New York City, and I also am a faculty member of Pace University.
Excellent. So Lamar, actually you came in, this was a question that I was kind of saving for you in regards to some tips or some suggestions for this new hybrid model. Many of us teach in schools where we have a high percentage of students who are either ESL, ENL, or special education. And I know in my experience, and it might be the same for others, that the students who struggle the most were those particular students. They struggle in the classroom, and so to be outside of the classroom and having to figure it out on their own, that was even more difficult for them. So what are some tips that you can give us to support our students who are either completely remote or who are doing hybrid models, who have any array of special needs so that we can support those students as much as possible?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question, and hello to all the other panelists on the panel as well. One is time, right? The first thing is time. Like, there's never going to be enough time to do everything that you need to do, but it's important that the teacher and the student together carve out time throughout the course of the week that they can work one-on-one or in small groups in order to meet their different goals that are set on the IEP. So you have to know what the IEP is, right? You need to know what it says, what are the different accommodations that they need to get. And you have to do your best to give those accommodations virtually, right? And so there were many times that I would be on Google Meet or Zoom having a one-on-one session with the student with a disability because they needed that extra support, right? I did a lot of modeling. I sent a lot of videos in. I was in consistent conversation with their parents, letting their parents know what's going on and figuring out how I can help them help the child as well. Because typically, the child would be in school and I could do this one-on-one with them, or I could do it in a small group, or there was that interpersonal connection going on. But now that when this became remote, I had to really bridge an even greater relationship with their parents because I was going to be requiring this to meet with the students so much more than I would have met before. So I think like the biggest thing for me is time, like making sure you're putting the time in to give the supports. Yes, you're going to have to scaffold. Yes, you're going to have to give graphic organizers. You're going to have to like literally record yourself doing something and then going over with the student while you're on a Google Meet. I've read text with kids, like they were reading while I was reading aloud to them so that they could follow along with me, stopping points. So it's essentially the same thing that we did in class. If you were an effective educator and an effective teacher, the same thing that you were doing in class, you have to now do it remotely, but it just takes a little bit more time out of you because you then have to figure out what works with their schedule and yours at the same time. Because we're no longer in the days right now where I would see Shania fifth period every day. No, there are times I'm working with Shania at 7 p.m. because that is the time that is going to work for the both of you. And so it's a lot of compromise as well because they're home. And many of our students that are home have siblings or they have responsibilities. So I needed to figure out how I can accommodate them as well as give them the supports that are necessary. It doesn't look perfect, right? I didn't always feel like it was a great session, but the fact that we were able to meet multiple times throughout the course of the week to give them their support, but also them support me as well, because I needed them just as much as they needed me, was helpful.
Thank you for that. one of the things I'm wondering, I know that during last session, during remote learning, it was very different depending on what school you were at and dependent on the teacher. Some teachers never went live. Went live every single day. Some did it every now and then. Some posted videos. Some recorded themselves doing something, etc. Is there going to be, or would we like to see some sort of clear? And I know, again, Marquise, as you said earlier, it's as much training as we got last time. But is there going to be, or would we like to see some sort of general idea or uniform blended learning model, meaning all teachers are expected to go live this amount of times. All teachers will be teaching when we're doing our blended learning models or remote model. We're all expected to get on the camera and work with students. Or is it going to be more of that Google Classroom, you're posting assignments and students doing it, right? So like, what is that going to look like for us, or what would we like to see it look like? Because from my personal opinion from last year, it was really just a lot of posting work. Posting work is not the same as teaching.
Right.
And many of us have students who that is not going to work for them, just you posting work. As I said, I have 2 younger siblings, and I would look at some of the work their teachers were posting, and I don't like to disparage any of my fellow educators, but some of the assignments just didn't even make sense nonsense. It was like clearly something you just got and posted it and was like, write a 15-page paper on this movie that you watched. And so Marquis white laughing. And
we had some, let me tell you, I just felt like in the spring, people were thrown in, right? Like, and had no idea. You had a mayor and a chancellor who couldn't decide if they schools, and then you were just jumping right in. And they gave us 2 days to plan. Remember those 2 days we were called back? In many schools, there were reports all across the city of teachers just sitting in their classrooms waiting for instruction. Like just waiting. Like they were calling the UFT, like, we're not doing anything here. We are just, like, why did we come in? Because they didn't want to come in, given the risk it was, how risky it was. And they were just sitting there. They said that we actually got nothing from it. So, like, yeah, there were people definitely posting. I'm not saying that was right, but there was definitely, like, people just posting busy work, right? Like, do this. Oh, I found this article. Again, we have no electronic resources. We have no textbooks. We have no, so if you have all those things that you had before, and then you went straight to online and you shifted in 2 days, and was ready to allegedly lead everything and redo your whole curriculum and get over and all those things, it just wasn't realistic. So some people were just finding, I heard people saying, sending do this experiment. I'm like, well, what science is this? This is not even, why are you finding biology? Like, it was all types of things that were going wrong. I do think, and I have told teachers, I've had town halls during the summer, I said, if you are home, because there are a lot of teachers, very excited to apply for the accommodations, I was like, be prepared, though, for more accountability. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that the city is going to make sure that that you're going to have to give some type of live instruction. Now you did summer school, Shania, so I know. I did. And wasn't that a requirement of some live instruction, right?
Every day. So 8, 11.
I understand, and they're trying to build in some of these same things. And the teachers unions really told people, like, be prepared for some type of instruction. We can't just, what happened in the spring was different. You can't start off a school year with new kids and everything and not be in front of them a little bit, because how do you build any relationship? This is going to be really challenging, given the fact that, it was one thing, we had relationships already established most of the time, to go and now begin and build. I was like, teachers need to be trained on how do you do icebreakers on remotely? How do you get to meet and build school culture remotely? There needs to be training on that, how to build culture. We don't have that. We have in my school 200 and plus freshman kids coming into a school, and we're starting online with them. They have no connection to the Frederick Douglass model. We tried to have a bridge program, so we had like 70 kids attend that over the internet, but it's so different when they're not in a building physically, if you wear a uniform and things like that, and all the school culture. I don't know.
But even when you do come in, you have a mask on. They still don't know who you are.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it's like, unless I have a picture of myself on the board every day.
Kids
or,
can be in the street.
I saw something like a hospital where the doctors and nurses would wear a picture of themselves attached to their scrub so that the patient could look at a face. That's something that teachers might implement. But even if they are in the room, all of these connections. And so actually this is a great shift, because I want to talk pedagogically, we're in a room, we think about, how, like it, love it or hate it, the Danielson model, right? And then the way that we're teaching. What does that even look like now?
Non-existent.
Right? Because I'm not putting y'all in groups.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want you to talk to me, to be honest. And so all of the things, the way how I look at it is, all of the things that they said that we should be bringing kids back for, to be in classroom, to have live instructions with teachers, etc. I feel like because of the way that our rooms are going to have to be set up, everything that makes in-person instruction good is not going to exist now, right? I'm not doing any group work. I'm not even coming to your desk. Sometimes a kid has a hard time, and I'll come to the desk, and lean down and hey, what's going on? Or what do you need help with? I noticed you got, or when they're doing the do now, I'm walking around the room. Okay, that's not even answering the question. What are you doing? I don't even want to walk around the room. I'm not touching your desk. I'm not leaning down next to you. So all of the things that make in-person instruction beneficial to our students, that's not going to exist with COVID, right? Forget the being rated. I don't even know how that would happen. But how do we now shift as teachers? Because again, if we're doing in-person learning, even if it's just 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever, we're there for 5 days of the week. How are we now doing these things that made our classroom good, that made us highly effective educators? What does that look like now? Everybody's like, I don't know.
I think that's something that, like, I cannot speak for others. I can only speak for myself. That's something that I'm grappling with, right? Like, I'm not too sure how that will look, because I know that in my practice, right? Yes, I'm next to the kids, right? I'm sitting right next to them. We're reading over something together. I'm probing. I'm asking them questions, right? I'm giving feedback. We are doing activities where we're moving around the room, right? Like, I don't have an answer for what that looks like, right? And that's something that I would consistently have to do, like some form of teacher action research to figure out what would be the best way to teach children if I had to teach them in person during COVID, during the pandemic, right? I don't even think that, like, I could bring you great content, but the delivery is so important, right? The delivery, the energy really makes the magic happen in the classroom between you and your students. And so I'm really questioning how is that magic gonna look? And I don't know. I wouldn't even know until I've been in it for a little bit, right? Like, I have to, like, kind of be in the classroom, feel how this is gonna feel how this is gonna look out. I could brainstorm and put things in place. You know how we have that PowerPoint ready for the first day of school, right? And how we have all that information up there and the different activities we want to do with our kids and work on building this culture. I could go in, but beforehand, I could have in my mind what I want to do. But until those children walk inside that room, I would have to really, 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 like, work on, have that, what do we do? Will we make changes on the fly, right? I really would have to think like that, because I'm not too sure how do you establish this great environment for learning and community throughout COVID, especially when you don't have the whole class there. Right? Because, depending on the school, well, if it's a blended model, kids are in 2 days in, 2 days out, right? We're unsure if it's going to be, we know hopefully it's consistent, right? The same consistent kids, but even yet and still, like, how is that really going to be helpful and supportive to students in their learning? And so, and how are we really going to build community? I don't have an answer for that. It's just something that I've been thinking about very, very hard. And I've really been struggling because I am the teacher that is all about community. And I'm the teacher that's all about relationship with the kids. And I work hard to build that community the first month of school, the month and on, right? I work so hard to do that they know that they're in a space that's brave, that's safe, that we can take risk. But we really taking a risk coming up in the building.
Right, we're not taking any more risks.
Right, the risk alone is coming up in the building to work and teach with kids. And then let alone, then you also got to think about, like, they're not just with you. They are going to go or be in front of others as well. So Jesus Christ, I don't know.
And I know for myself, I think, like, well, instead of with the group work, I can assign them groups in Google and they can do it that way. And then I think, then why can't we just do this at home?
Exactly. Because if we gonna do breakout rooms and stuff and all this other, things via Google Classroom or whatever other platforms, we might as well just do this in the house.
Right. Yeah, because that's kind of what I was thinking also. I was like, okay, well, we can still kind of do group work. We have Zoom, we have the breakout rooms. You can assign each student a role, and you can do all these things still with the breakout rooms. But Ms. Francis, you kind of said it. Then if we could do all that, like, you're better off doing it remotely. But then the issue there is, are all the students going to show up? So there's, it's hard to say. I agree totally. It's a struggle, Lamar, as far as just really thinking about how to approach it and really learn as you go. So it's not until September where we have our students and to really be able to figure out, what's going to really work best, especially being in person now.
So just two more, someone had a question want to do two more things and then we're going to transition because I know that a lot of people want to watch the town hall. Somebody says a teacher's been told to stay away from assigning group projects for the school.
I mean, I don't know. No, we probably won't be told that you can't, because anything they can do it online. They can work in groups on. I think we have to actually. I think we should encourage. Like, I'm doing some grad school courses, and I've done some group work online with, and I met my whole group. The summers during just working with them online, Zoom. So like at least in my school, as a high school, I think it would actually be good college preparation to like find them into some group work where they have to do things independently using the internet, because this after everything is done, COVID-19 will have changed how we learn and teach no matter what.
And the place.
Yeah, it's going to be very different. And I was just going to go back to something you were talking about earlier quickly, was that I expect, and we are planning that, which is why we should be remote, and I believe we will be at the end of the day. There are going to be a lot of schools where students are literally in a room working on a laptop no matter what. They're
right all day.
And so that's my school is going to mostly be that way. In a high school, because remember, part of what we're not talking about too, in high school model, where students have independent programs.
And some curriculum.
We're not planning. New York City does not really want them moving. They're going to be in rooms, right? So that means teacher moves, but then everyone doesn't have the same. You're not going to have all ninth graders don't have necessarily the same math, the same chemistry, the same this, that, the other. So you're going to have things where students are just assigned to rooms, right? Like 10 students in a room, and they're independently working, and there's a teacher just babysitting in some ways. Or they're doing their own, I guess, teaching, but it's hard for a teacher. We were talking about that too, contractually, like how can a teacher be watching over the students while also teaching their own independent class, on the computer and stuff like that? It would be too much. So there's going to be some real contract questions too. Like and these are things that by now, if we're going back in 2 weeks and starting instruction, we will really need to know how this is going to look. Principals still don't know.
My biggest question was, when we heard the model, which is students will have a working lunch. So we're already preparing them for that nonsense, working through your lunch. Where students are going to have a working lunch. And so I couldn't figure out how it was going to work. And so it was explained that students, teachers are still teaching, students are going to eat their lunch. And so I said, through the mask? And they said, no, they're going to take the mask off to eat. And I said, well, where am I going to be when they take their mask off to eat? And so I'm supposed to be in the room while the students are eating food with no mask on. So apparently, there's some new research that says that Corona takes lunch breaks, and when you eat your food, coronavirus disappears and it's gone, and we don't have to worry about it. And then when you put your mask back on, then coronavirus comes back.
Shania, go sit down somewhere.
Because how else does that make sense to anybody?
You're absolutely correct, though.
How does it make sense to anybody in the world that if that's the case, then we might as well just not have masks on at all for the day, right? We're letting people take it off for 30 minutes to eat lunch, then we just might as well not have them on at all. And if we can't do indoor dining, then why are you indoor dining in my classroom?
Why are we indoors at all?
Right. And so these, again, are all things that I hope that our children are looking at and saying, when I grow up, and I'm in charge of the world, we're going to be more prepared than this. We're going to make sure that we in this year, that we're more educated, that we, yes, I do think that, as a state, we've done a very good job. I remember when it first happened, you had New York license plates, people didn't even want you in their state. They were looking at us crazy, right? And so now we're like less than 1%. So I feel like there are things that we've done really, really well. But when it comes to this, trying to open the schools, I still don't get it. And maybe there's a secret explanation. I still think obviously it's about the economy and it's about having places for kids to go while parents go to work. And so as I already spoke to Mr. Harrison, we need to renegotiate that contract because clearly we are very important to society and we need to be paid accordingly. But with that being said, as we transition to hearing what our leaders have to say about this, I do want to ask you guys, just as we close out, what do you want to hear from this town hall when they go live and explain to us what this is going to look like and answer questions from parents and students and educators, etc. So what do you want to hear from them?
I mean, I'm not even listening to it. I'm not watching it today. I don't really care because to me it's impossible. So
Right.
like there's nothing you could say. To me it's a bunch of propaganda about to be spilled about how we got it. I saw the chancellor already on CNN. He did a great job. I mean, he was smiling and he was happy. It's like, we are 100% ready. I don't know what school system he's managing. But I also think that it really just shows to me when you were saying that too, it's like, it's not even about COVID. You're right. We've come back. New York State, New York City. It actually has been, it's showing is the failures of the New York City public school system overall. Right? Like we just have the resources and the things that we never have. We're on top of each other. These are things that have been in place for so long in this failing school system. And I'm not saying that the teachers are failing. I'm talking about like, the system has been failing our students for so long that like, it's impossible. Now you want us to do almost more with less, like way less.
Way less.
Way less. They're cutting budgets like crazy. You want us to do more. And the thing is, it's like, you've been failing the system because so many school systems, honestly, I've been impressed by looking at the national across the country. There've been some major cities who've been able to really pull together remote learning. And it's because their systems weren't as messed up as ours. Like we have so much stuff that's wrong that to think that you could correct it and you didn't even start working on, like all these plans were being drawn up late. It wasn't like we started working from June or March. Teachers and everybody together. These are all recent plans. Like everything that the chancellor's talking about, this is in the last month. They're working overtime. People working overtime, getting paid, right? I want to know who's getting paid, these planners in Central who are getting paid to do all this planning. But like this is just, it's impossible to correct, years and years of misfunding and just lack of resources. And, like we don't even have online textbooks. Like so many school systems had systems where they could easily switch because one, they have the book and they have the online edition for the students to access. All those things, just small things those are real big things though to instruction that we don't even begin to have enough of.
I know in the last panel that we had, our last panelist, Ms. Albert and Ms. Whaley, brought up this exact point, which was that this virus really exposed the inequities of our school system.
Yeah.
And that also that there was funding for certain things so for example, they brought up, I've been asking for laptops for my classroom since whenever coronavirus hit, boom, 300,000 laptops, right? And so these things that we were asking for that we were told that we couldn't afford that miraculously showed up. And then other things that we need. So for example, I know many of our schools, our kids share books. They don't have a book for each kid to take home and work with and etc. And so they certainly don't have the online version, which is actually more expensive than the physical copy, which I don't understand. But or, as you said, you have school districts where they have the funding and so their kids can go online, do the work, and they can have the book at home. And if they want to, they can buy their own book. And so depending on where you come from, that zip code, your school system response to COVID is going to be very different. Right? So yes, everyone can get sick from the virus. We know that. But as always, the inequities become more prevalent when things like this happen. And so how do we now, as educators, parents, people who live in the city, pay taxes in the city, contribute in some capacity, even if we don't live there, how do we now, after this, when this dust settles, how do we then start pushing and saying, look, we saw that the Chromebooks that y'all gave us was missing 7 letters. And and the books were outdated and the kids couldn't get online and the window, you're telling me open the window, but we know some of these schools that are in the basement, the windows don't even open or the windows have gates on them. You can't even get them open, right? And so how do we now start pushing and saying, moving forward, these are the changes that we need to make so that our students and teachers are in environments where they can truly be successful. Because clearly I feel like we can't let this go by without starting to make demands for real change. Because once the moment goes by, it goes by. Nobody thinks about it again because it'll be a new thing to think about. And so We know a lot of the things that we're being asked to do, we can't do because we don't have the resources to do it. But we want to have the resources to do it, right? Absent a virus. We want to have the laptops, we want to have the ventilation systems, we want to have the ACs, we want to have windows that open. We want all of those things. So now how moving forward can we start advocating for these things so that we have what we need? And don't say burn down the building, Marquise.
You know, we can definitely start making these demands. I mean, I think now, like I said, this goes a lot. I think it's going to change how the teachers negotiate their contract and some of the things that will go into our demands as a contract. Because, like, I think now one of the things that we've never talked about, we're going to have to ask for a school calendar as a part of a contractual deadline as to when a school calendar will be released, because they were able to continue to put off making a school calendar for COVID-19. And I think that's I still don't know the school calendar for this year. I don't know if it's out already. But it's been disgraceful that we don't even know the dates, because they're working around, it needs to be like a guaranteed timeline. They're working around because we're working remote. The calendar shouldn't change. Like the those dates should be established, the holidays, whatever, and our breaks should be established and not like taken away from us or anything like that. And I think that's where they've been flexible, because I don't think that's not a part of, like, I don't think on any article of our contract says, a calendar must be released by the DOE by this date. And so these are small things, right? But like, I value the calendar. It's been driving me crazy that we didn't have a calendar all summer, because you usually make plans based upon like the next year, knowing like, February break, April, the spring break, all those things we still don't
plan my vacations and all the trips are cheap right now. So
I don't want people who listen to us thinking that we're, people are going to say, oh, we're greedy teachers. There's their breaks and everything. But we work hard. That's why. So we deserve.
As you can see, we are very important to society because everybody's begging us to go back to work.
We deserve to know when we getting off, because that also keeps our sanity, like planning, like knowing like I'm going to work these 4 weeks hard so I can get this 1 week off, and stuff like that. So, small things like that. So, I mean, I think definitely the UT we're going into contract negotiations next year, but I think that, we're going to be in a different climate too, financially as a city. So it's just going to be we're about to go into different times, and this year the UFT has been very clear, like the budget for next year's school year was already allocated for like teachers and stuff like that. But if there's no federal bailout come next year, the next school year, we could be looking at a whole different city in regards to layoffs and things like that.
You mean 2021, 22?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So this year we were already pretty much like, despite there being hard times coming, right? There was monies already set aside for the 2021 school year. That was already taken care of. What's going to be a problem if there's no federal bailout and our state budget deficit, it's going to be 21, 22. Which we could be looking at a whole different city in regards to what we're talking about.
Well, that's what we need to go out and vote. That's what that comes in.
Exactly.
It's the federal government that's.
Yeah, don't get me on that one. Yeah, that.
It's the federal government that's making that decision to not support. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I mean, I really don't think we want to see a country where a place like New York City goes under. Because then it doesn't look good for the country at all. I'm not going to say we're that important, but we are kind of that important. Just to be honest, we really are. So with that being said, I actually haven't even decided whether or not I'm going to watch the town hall, because as Marquise said, I know that a lot of it is just going to be smiling, and it's just not. It's going to be
somebody to watch it though, so they can give us the updates.
All right, I'll watch it and give the update. I'll watch it and give the update. But we work in the school. We know what needs to be done. We know that despite what many people may think, we sacrifice a lot of our personal time, our energy, effort, sanity to work with our students to make sure that they have the best environments that they can have. And now we're being asked to do one more thing, which is potentially sacrifice our well-being. Literally, and I'm not exaggerating that. That is a very serious statement based on what's going on. And so now it's just one more thing that we're being asked to do. I certainly hope between now and September 10th, August is already a bad month. It's the dog days of summer. It's one little long Sunday. And so to already be anxious about going back to work on a normal in a normal August, but now this new August that we're dealing with, where we really don't know what's going on. Um, I just really wish the best for everyone, and I really hope that between now and then we can figure this out. I did want to briefly speak about Marquise, because I don't know if everyone had the chance to see the UFT um, meeting or the UFT press conference. Can you just give us a quick recap of what that was about?
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I watched most of it, but not all of it. But basically what the UFT outlined today, and you can go, I would encourage everyone to go on uft.org. They launched another school reopening plan. Okay. And it has a very clear, bright lines of like must have inspected ventilation systems. Every school must have, and they're launching their own like inspection of schools. So basically, schools that don't meet, that fail, which there'll be plenty of schools that failed their tests, are going to. They're saying that those schools absolutely have to be need to be working remote until the ventilation systems are. So it's all about safety and equipment. Michael Mulgrew was discussing also the fact that, having the mayor announcing having a nurse in every school is like, it's like nothing, it's good. We needed a nurse in every school. We've been asking for years. But it's not going to save us if that's, that's like a Band-Aid. Like if kids are coming in with COVID or teachers are coming in with COVID, none of us are immune to it. So teachers or anyone having COVID, it also requires that there'll be testing, and the plan requires that testing has to be readily available, and that we're saying that everyone who's entering a building within 10 days of the school year must have been tested, must be tested, show negative, or been tested for the antibodies.
Okay, so you're telling me that was not a requirement before, that everyone had to be tested before coming back to school?
The mayor and the city have not outlined a plan on how they'll do that.
If I want to go to another country, if I want to go to Jamaica right now or Bahamas, well, actually the 3 countries that will accept an American passport, whatever they are, because we know there are very few who want us, I have to show them evidence that I am negative. I'm having a very minor dental procedure done, and I had to take a COVID test today. Very uncomfortable. I just want to say this to everyone with these Instagram videos. It was not that bad. You guys were completely exaggerating. People are jumping and screaming. It was not that bad.
There's 2 tests. So they've moved. You might have had the new test. You might have had the newer test. The new test is a regular Q-tip that swabs in both nostrils for 30 seconds. The original one, I've had this my 4th COVID test I've taken. I get them regularly. The first one did go way back up.
Mine did too. Went all the way up.
Oh, that's kind of it wasn't comfortable. I wasn't screaming, but it wasn't comfortable. I was like,
No, it's uncomfortable, but it's like a pressure. But the point is that it's something very minor. It was no big deal, but they were like, no, we need you to get tested before we accept you. And so when you're saying this right now, it's very interesting to me that was not a requirement. How are we allowing 1.1 million people potentially, right? Let's just assume that everybody came. We know now about 600 and something thousand chose to come, an additional 40,000 since last week said, no, we staying home. So we have about 300,000 so staying home. We still have a good chunk coming in.
Yeah, that means the city would have to be prepared to give at least an additional 700,000 plus tests within 10 days of September 10th. Or September. For teachers, September 8th, because we start September 8th. Right. But the results are also not coming back right now very fast. So there's just a lot of, and then they have to have tests readily available for people to constantly be tested. All these things are not necessarily in place where results can come back. We don't have the instant testing like some other, like the NBA and all those other sports organizations.
That's really important stuff.
So we are demanding some of these things. And again, some of these things are it's going to be impossible to necessarily meet by September 10th. So Michael Mulgrew has said we are prepared for anything. That means we are prepared to go to court. And he says we are prepared to take action, as he said it, if necessary. Given that New York City teachers, we can't strike because we're so valuable to the economy here. They put us under the Taylor law.
How valuable we are. I think it's important.
The Taylor law is usually in most places they have laws that police, firemen, ambulance, nurses, doctors can't strike because those are for the health. In New York, we are a part of that as well as MTA workers, right? They're part of the Taylor law too, because we keep this major city running. And so he said, this is the same union. We haven't violated the Taylor law in many, since like the 60s when we were on strike, I believe, or maybe we might have struck after that, but we have not been on strike in years. Mind you, we went without a contract for 5 years under Michael Bloomberg and did not strike. Well, he said, if we have to take action for this one, because our lives depend on it, we will take action and deal with the Taylor law later. Meaning they have the ability to fine you up to millions of dollars a day. The union when you're on strike, which is our money though. That's our dues, right? That could cripple our unions. But he's saying we're willing to obviously go to court first and whatever is necessary to prevent. If things are not right, then we can't go into those buildings, which that's to protect our lives basically.
Right. And so I know I just want to close out and add and say, for anyone who's watching, particularly parents, people who are not necessarily teachers, is understanding that this is done for the benefit of everyone. It's not just teachers who want to stay home. We know that some of us are a parent. I'm not a parent, but Ms. Bache is a parent. Ms. Masamba is a parent. And so we understand the fear that you have as a parent, the uncertainty as far as having to go to work to support your family, take care of your family. But we want to make sure that you have a family to take care of, because we are saying that right now, as is, we are not ready. The system is not ready. It is not whatever you're seeing on TV. It is not prepared to handle the number of students that we have. We have the largest. Again, we live in New York City, so we don't get how big we are. Right? It's kind of like when I went away to college that first year and I went to a small school. And I was like, what, people live like this? What do you mean the store's not open? Right? Like, so we don't realize how large we are because we're here. But New York City is large and we are the largest school district in America. And so, thank you, Mr. Harrison. He put a checklist in the chat for us. So if you guys want, and I'm going to also post it to the SF Ed page on Facebook and on Instagram.
These are our demands as of today. So that was the checklist that Mo Group put together. It is asking for a lot. N95 respirators, all these, it's a lot of stuff. But he's saying until this list is checked off, then we shouldn't be going back into the building. So that everyone could take a look at that. It's requiring a lot for everyone's safety, like you said.
Well, I'm going to post it as well on the page, on the business page on Facebook, so that people can look at it if they want to. Because some people are tuning in live, so they might not be able to see the link.
Gotcha.
So I post it to them. But like I said, I just want to close out with that and letting people know we don't just want to stay home. I prefer to go into work, actually. I love the relationship that I have with my kids. It literally makes teaching what it is, those relationships. The jokes that they crack, keeping me updated on all my slang words is very important for me. All my music and everything comes from the kids. And so that really is the best part about teaching. But I want to be around to do that. And I want all of them to be around. And I want their family members to be around. And so I know a lot of people, I saw some stuff where people trying to compare us to nurses. You can't be a nurse remotely, but you can teach remotely. And so we don't have to go in right now. And so we're not saying keep schools closed until the end of the world, but we are saying is that let's wait until we really have this figured out. Instead of worrying about opening schools, let's use this time to train us so that we can be properly prepared for remote learning, so that when we have our students in front of us, in front of that camera, we can do the best job that we can. Let's take the time maybe to retrain those attendance teachers, et cetera, so that they can reach out to those kids who are missing. Right? And really, let's take the time to use what we have so that if we have to go through Thanksgiving or Halloween or December, whatever we have to go through, we know eventually we're going to step back into the building. We just want to step back under the best circumstances. And if we are doing in-person teaching, we want to make sure that it's valuable. It is not valuable for me to have kids in my room on a computer. I'm walking around to look to make sure that they not on, that they not uploading their latest mixtape to SoundCloud or whatever, and that they're actually doing work. And so I would much rather be in an environment where I can actually teach like a teacher, which is what I went to school for, and not be a moderator. And so that's what we are asking for. We are asking for that safe environment for our students. And in the meantime, give us the support and the training so that we can be best for our students. So Ms. Masamba, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Long, any last words before we close out for today? Let me just copy and pasting this for.
Thanks for having this. I think it was a very good conversation, and yeah, I think I'm glad you stressed the importance of like we all. I think most of us. I'm tired of being home. Like it's really been hard mentally too, right? Mm-hmm. But like safety of everyone is really important, and yeah, we need that.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I echo everything that you just said, Ms. Francis. I would love to be back, but I think safety at this point, it is a priority for everyone involved. Although, this, I think for this, at least from the social emotional piece for our students, I think it is also important for them to be back as well. But again, it comes back down to their safety, their physical safety. I think as far as the next step, at this point, I'm just like, I want to know, okay, well, what's next? Because whatever they're going to be saying at the town hall, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be, no, we're not ready. We're going to reverse everything we just said. So for me now, I'm just thinking, okay, well, what's next? Like, what can I do now if needed to, take action, So I'll be looking out for that. And hopefully we have some kind of word soon. Because at this point, just even in having this discussion now, it's just really making me feel a little bit more like, oh my goodness, we really are not ready. So what are we going to do?
Right, and also before Mr. Long speaks, also just me, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, really using this as an opportunity to further our discussion on inequity and talking about, because if you think about the parents, right, they're essential workers. The essential workers are now people who work in supermarkets, they're people who work at Walmart, they're people who work in any type of retail or food that we need, and they are afraid because they need to go to work. Right. And so really having this conversation about inequity and the fact that people have to risk their children's lives to send them to school so that they can support themselves. And so I really hope that in addition to talking about education inequities, we use it to talk about inequity in general across our city. Mr. Long?
I mean, y'all all summed it up so beautifully. Again, thank you for allow me to be a part of the panel. And I think that it's just a big what's next. That's the biggest thing, like what is going to happen next, right? This is the month of August is a crucial time for teachers and counselors as we prepare to prep for the beginning of the year. We're working on units of study. We're looking at text selection. We are figuring out how the year is going to look, and teachers really don't know how to really move successfully yet. And today is August 18th?
Right. At this point, I already know what book I'm teaching.
Right. By this time I have, my whatever curriculum I'm going to do for the year is kind of set, right? Of course changes are happening, but for the most part, we don't know for sure what's coming up and what's next. And I think that for them to feel like we have enough time, as Marquis said, they're like, yeah, this is not enough time, right? This is not enough time. 2 weeks is not enough time for y'all to figure out if y'all gonna walk through every building within the Department of Education, right? And
schools, 1,200 schools we have.
Right, like, y'all, like, it's not enough time, and you really need to look at the bigger picture of all of this. And as you said, the inequities happening within the Department of Education in New York City, especially facing our Black and Brown students. And I think that I don't think the mayor is thinking clearly. I don't think the chancellor is thinking clearly. I think they're just looking at numbers and money and data. And as of right, that's not really helpful. And I know that I forgot, I think I was listening to the news this morning or yesterday where there was like, the percentages are really low, right? okay, so the numbers can be low, but this is New York City. How many people live in New York City? And even if we have, 1% of people testing positive or having COVID, that's still a significant number of people that could potentially be going to work, getting on the bus, getting on the train. And so I really think that the higher ups, our administration, our chancellor, our leaders, they really need to think clearly and look at the bigger picture. It's not about just getting us in front of our kids. We want to be in front of our kids. I miss my kids, and I'm moving to a brand new school, so this is going to be very different for me as I am getting to know new kids via whatever the means will be. I just really would like to know what's next and how this is going to look moving forward.
Thank you. So Ms. Boache is not on the call anymore. I'm sure she would have said everything you just said. So I'll speak on her behalf. Everything we just said, she agrees with. So with that being said, I want to thank every single person that was on the panel, Dr. Okiki, who was on earlier, Ms. Boache, Mr. Harrison, and Ms. Masamba for giving us your time. Thank you to everyone who has joined in live. I will be reposting this session once it comes back to me. I'll post it along with the link that Mr. Harrison shared with us. I hope that if we meet again, it will be under much better circumstances. I wish all of my fellow educators, as well as my parents and students, a safe remainder of whatever this 2020 has been. And I really just hope that ultimately the best decision is made, and that the best decision is made for everyone involved, so that everyone can be safe and that we can learn and do what we need to do. So with that being said, thank you all and have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye, guys. Thanks, Ms. Masamba.
Bye.
Bye-bye.